Breaking tonight, a new battle on the campaign trail, this time between Republican frontrunner Donald Trump and a candidate on the rise, Senator Marco Rubio. It started at the last debate when Senator Rubio accused Mr. Trump of lacking foreign policy credentials. The fight has been simmering for days, and in just the last hour, we heard from Senator Rubio again. Here's part of the latest exchange, starting with Trump earlier today.
Look, Marco Rubio sits behind a desk sometimes, and he reads stuff. He's in, committees, so that's all he does. I create jobs all day long. I'll know more about all of this than all of them put together, and believe me, we'll have a winning strategy. If Marco Rubio's good, how come we're doing so badly? Marco Rubio, he's like a kid. He shouldn't even be running in this race as far as I'm concerned. He's a kid.
We need to have someone who has real thoughts about and depth on these issues.
Are you saying Mr. Trump doesn't have those real thoughts?
Well, if you watched the debate last week, I think that answers itself. When the debate turned to policy, he stood silent for 23 minutes, and that's why he had such a bad debate. That's why he's now reacting the way he is and continuing to offend anyone who criticizes him. He's very thin-skinned, obviously. He's very sensitive to criticism. But he can't have a conversation about policy because, quite frankly, he doesn't know anything about policy.
Joining us tonight, Roger Stone, a former political advisor to Donald Trump's campaign for president. But we begin with Charles Krauthammer, Fox News contributor and author of the best-selling book, Things That Matter, which is now out in paperback. Charles, great to see you. I mean, I can feel the Twitter feed firing up right now on the thins. Rubio says he's thin-skinned. He says he doesn't know anything about foreign policy. He says he had a bad debate. And now you hear the line of attack from the other side, from Trump, which is he's a kid. He sits behind a desk all day. He pushes paper while I'm out there creating jobs. And by the way, he has a terrible attendance record. Your thoughts?
Well, first, I just want to assure you at the outset that even though I am a doctor, there will be no anatomical or surgical references in my analysis. I just want to allay your fears at the very beginning, because you never know when it can strike.
Correct.
Look, Trump has a lot of strong suits. Foreign policy is not one of them. And I think that his criticism is rather, well, unusual. All that Marco Rubio does is sit behind a desk and read. Well, you can actually learn something from reading and go to committees. Well, the committee is a Foreign Relations Committee of the Senate, where you get witnesses like Henry Kissinger, David Petraeus, George Shultz, and others from whom one can learn. They've all been there. They know a lot. They have seen the scene, and they have a lot to impart. And as the concluding part of that argument, which is I've created a lot of jobs, I'm sure Mr. Trump has created a lot of jobs, but that's a complete non sequitur when we're talking about what's America to do in Syria.
But he has an answer for that, too. He says, I'm going to appoint the next MacArthur. I don't need to know all of this myself. Hugh Hewitt asked him, do you know the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah? Is that important? And he said, it doesn't matter to you yet, but will it? And he says, well, it'll matter when it's appropriate. I'll know more about it than you know, believe me.
Look, first of all, the idea that we're going to appoint a MacArthur, what an idea. Why didn't anybody else think about that? This is a remarkable innovation in foreign policy, to appoint really smart people. That's what presidents have been trying to do for 200 years. Some succeed, some don't. And to say that it doesn't really matter what I think, I'll learn it up. Well, listen, the other side, the Iranians, the Syrians, ISIS, the Russians, the Chinese, will know. And when a president comes into office, he doesn't have a grace period, a honeymoon, that our adversaries in the world are going to grant him until he does the reading and the studying and the committee meetings that Mr. Trump is ridiculing in Marco Rubio. He's going to have to be up to speed, and they will be tempted to take advantage of a novice in the Oval Office from day one.
What do you make of Trump's line of attack now that he's unleashing that Rubio's just a kid? Because you hear that from, people other than Donald Trump, that Rubio projects, not only is he young, that he projects young.
That was the same criticism of John Kennedy. He was very young. Obama was relatively young. We've had young presidents in our history. That doesn't tell you anything one way or the other. What you care about is the depth of experience and knowledge, irrespective of age. If you've been studying foreign policy, you've been looking at it, you've been thinking about it for a dozen years, that is worth more than birth years. That's how you measure a president and what he knows, what he would think, how he would approach the Middle East, how he would approach the challenges from China, from Russia, and elsewhere, and not how old he is. I think it's completely irrelevant.
Do you think that this is, I mean, this latest dust-up suggests that Trump views Rubio as the top non-outsider challenger, the main establishment challenger he has?
I happen to think if that's his analysis, it is probably correct, because I think Rubio, on paper, has the best presentation to face, say, a Hillary Clinton for the Republican side. And in terms of his eloquence, depth of knowledge, everybody saw it in the first and the second debate, in which he could express himself on practically every issue with authority and even in some cases with passion. So he is a very presentable candidate in that sense, and I think he's likely to emerge out of the so-called establishment lane. But Trump has been pretty rough on everybody else who's been rising in the polls, namely Carly Fiorina and Dr. Carson, whom he called an okay doctor, so-so doctor. I have wondered what exactly is the medical expertise that prepares Trump to make judgments about the skills and the knowledge of a neurosurgeon. I'd like to hear that.
It was a funny moment at the debate where Carson turned to Trump after Trump had offered his thoughts on vaccines and said, "You're an okay doctor, too."
That was his best line of the night, yeah.
Dr. Carson, great to see you. Dr. Krauthammer, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, Roger Stone is also with me now, used to work for Trump's campaign. Roger, good to see you. So let's speak about that Rubio's accusation here that Trump knows nothing, he says, about foreign policy.
Yeah, well, that's obviously wrong. Trump very clearly has outlined a number of bold strokes in terms of foreign policy. He knows, for example, that we need to rebuild our military. He is a big fleet man. He's a builder. He knows that ISIS needs to be crushed. He knows that we need to re-engage the Russians to improve the balance of power in Europe. He's not going to get down in the weeds like a Washington insider. Is it in the weeds to not know Hamas versus Hezbollah? He knows they're both evil, and he's committed to crush them, which is more than you can say for the current president.
Okay. What about the accusation that you heard from Rubio tonight? He's too thin-skinned. He's thin-skinned. He goes after anybody who offers a critique of him, valid or invalid.
He's very tough. There's no question about it. But I think it's time for a tough president. It's time to put aside
No, that's not what he was saying. He was saying he's thin-skinned. That he, you know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, we talked the last segment about just today. He went after the New York Times. He went after Politico. Of course, he went after Fox, as he's been doing. He went after CNN. I mean, all of them are unfair, according to Donald Trump.
Well, I think there are a lot of voters who believe that career politicians and the elite media are in bed together. Trump is very combative. It is his style, but it is why he has risen in the polls. It's also why, interestingly enough, he seems to be holding his position in the 3 early states. So he continues to be the front runner. And we have another debate. I have no doubt about him outlining an economic policy and continuing to lay out additional views on foreign policies. But the idea that being in the Florida legislature and then sitting for half a term, or a little more than half a term, in the U.S. Senate prepares you to be president. I like Marco Rubio. I think he might be president someday. Donald Trump is running for chief executive. He has run something. He's run a multi-billion-dollar company. We're talking about somebody to run the federal government. It would be an Eisenhower-style administration. In other words, Trump believes in choosing very good people and following their expertise.
I want to ask you about Fiorina, too, but I do deny ever being in bed with Politico, the New York Times, or CNN. I've never seen one of those in my bed. I swear. I want to ask you about Fiorina. Obviously, she's surging in the polls because the Republicans believe that she bested everyone in that debate. Do you see that lasting?
No, I really don't, because what it's brought with it is a scrutiny on her record. Between the layoffs, the outsourcing, now substantial evidence that she may have skillfully evaded sanctions to have HP do business in Iran, the fact that Barbara Boxer, using these very issues, dispatched her so easily in California, I think the bloom is off the rose. Plus the idea that she is an outsider. While it's true she's never held public office, she was the chief cheerleader for John McCain. There is the ultimate Washington insider.
What do you make of Trump's flatlining in the polls?
I don't believe he's flatlining. There has been some receding in the polls, but Megyn, it was 10-1, 10-1 in the last debate. Here's the point people don't realize. He has decimated Jeb Bush. Even the Fox poll, when you asked who won the debate, 2% said that Bush won the debate. So Jeb Bush, who was thought to be the front runner, who was thought to be the guy who was going to take on Trump, has been destroyed by Trump.
But more people believe that Donald Trump lost the debate than anyone else. The Republican voters said Donald Trump lost that debate, not Jeb Bush. Trump.
Again, this race is still fluid. Trump maintained his lead. I thought he destroyed Bush in the debate, and that was his goal.
He went down 8 points in the CNN poll.
But his goal was to destroy Bush and eliminate him as a contender, and I think he's done that.
Okay. Roger, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Also tonight, a school district refuses a request to close for the Muslim holidays, and wait until you hear the threat that followed. Brian Kilmeade is here with that story. And then, is the Clinton campaign responsible for leaking this controversial picture of President Obama in Muslim dress? Is Hillary Clinton the original birther, as some are claiming? Katie Pavlich has a new fact-checking report right after this break.
In 2008, she was the original birther. She's the one that started that whole thing. Hillary is a birther.